Either pick up the orbs or jump on the snail, or they can get into. Oh, it stopped. Or they can become like warriors, I believe it was. They have different kind of weapons, either swords or they can have shields. They can have like a gun, like a laser gun. I never got that one. And just kind of fly around and try to either kill the queen or kill the other guys to try to get them from getting the orbs. Or like I said, they can get the orbs too, which I think at first like nobody would pay attention to me when I was doing that, but then those last few games we started hitting. I started like people started trying to block me from the base area or from we had to collect the orbs into, so or the honeycomb, I guess I suppose it was like the hive. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I think you had played it, DB, a
Yeah,
little
I
bit
played it with
beforehand.
my sons beforehand, and kind of got a little bit of the sense of it, as you were saying. Like trying to describe it is kind of goofy to talk about the
Yeah.
different win states. But really, it was that hour that we spent kind of playing it together that I really started to see some of the strategy. And then even the next day, I played some more with my sons and realized even more strategy that I didn't pick up on when we were playing. Like if you're the queen, you can fly over any one of the transformation stations, like you were talking about, where you change into a knight or get a weapon or get a shield. And if you're the queen, you'll make that station your color so that the other team can't change into it.
Oh, nice.
So there's a little bit of strategy there as well in terms of being able to kind of be on the defensive. And it makes me think of, there were some of those matches when you were the queen and Swiss and I were both knights, and we were all kind of guarding, or one of us was a knight and one of us was trying to guard the snail. So there was really the opportunity for some coordination there, rather than kind of some of the random scrambling. But at the same time, sometimes that random scrambling worked. Like Swiss and I were chasing after something else, and suddenly you announce, "I got one more orb before we win with getting all the filling our hive." So I mean, there's some ways where there is this ability to have a multiple win state, or kind of try to manage all of it, which goes back to the original arcade game. So this was a original 5v5 arcade game. So you're all playing kind of at the same station, and so this release on PC and Switch um, brings it down. It eliminates one other player on each team, and it also adds some of those transformation stations we were talking about.
Yeah, no, I think I had a question now, and Swiss had asked it during the gameplay. Now I can't remember what it is when you were just talking. I forgot what it was. I don't remember now, but
That's
yeah, I
okay. It
mean,
usually happens. People forget because
yeah,
I just ramble on.
I'll,
So,
I'll
but no,
think
I
about
mean,
it again in a
I
second.
think it was. I was really, as somebody who had played it just a little bit beforehand, I was really kind of. I thought it was really encouraging and enjoyable how quickly we all kind of picked it up, right? Because of the fact that everything is out there on the screen, that even though there's the potential for complexity, that because all that information in terms of the multiple win states and everybody's movement is out there on the screen all at one time, it made it pretty easy to communicate. That we were able to strategize a little bit, but also not totally be zoned into the game. You could be talking about other things as well. So there was this kind of, I mean, it really did kind of mirror if we were all sitting elbow to elbow, standing elbow to elbow in an arcade somewhere, being able to kind of both scream and encourage each other on, but also have a chat about the rest of life as we were playing an arcade game.
So now let me understand this. When you guys were playing, you guys playing against other people?
For the most part, yeah.
Yes, for the most part. I mean, there were a few matches where there was one bot in ours and one bot in the other person's or the other teams. Sometimes the other team it looked to be three people all sharing one station, one switch, because they all had the same user image and name, just with like a 1 and a 2 after him, which is as I played with my sons,
So this is
it shows up as.
so this is a game that has both online and local co-op then.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, I didn't notice because since I think you were the party leader, I believe, DB, or was that Swiss?
Yeah, I was the party leader.
Were there any other kind of modes or anything? Because I don't remember seeing because, like I said, I lost control of the
That's pretty much
main
the
menu.
game.
Okay.
I mean, in some ways, it's similar to Towerfall in that sense. Like there is, this is this is pretty much the mode in terms of that kind of frantic combat in that 16-bit type of art style. But
Okay.
and there were maybe 4 or 5 different maps with a little bit of variation. It seemed like the strategy changes a little bit, but not a whole lot. More about location than anything.
Yeah, they kind of split the hive on I think a couple of maps where it was kind of like on the lower part of the map and the upper part of the map where you had to go get the energy balls back. So I mean, other than that, it was pretty much just one area where you had to, at least for that part, where you had to get everything back. Some of them, like where the snail was, like you can, like it was just like a total flat plane. Other ones had like a drop off, like if an actual player, the snail would be all right, but the player would actually fall through with certain parts. So you kind of had to had to be aware of that. I remember my question now. So, and Swiss's question, I don't remember what your answer was because I was trying to figure out the game because it was early on. But was there a difference between the arcade and the console version because of the black name at the end, or is it pretty much the same?
Well, so the arcade version had 5 players versus 4.
Okay.
There's a few additional maps in the black version, and there's some additional the kind of offensive defensive change stations are there as well. So
okay.
There's a little more nuance to it than in the arcade version, at least from what I've been reading and viewing.
Were the weapons and defense stuff, that's all the same though? Like it was just like a shield and a gun and a sword, basically. That's all I saw.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think that is there feels like there's a little bit of strategy there as well, because as I was playing with my son the next day, like we got hammered by that gun as it would fly across the screen and even loop around on the other side of the screen, almost like classic Atari like.
Yeah.
But then when I played it the next day, there's a recharge time on the gun, so you really can't spam it. You get kind of a shot, and then you get a little bit of visual smoke coming out of the gun, which then makes you vulnerable for a queen to come after you. So there's some risk reward there as well. So I mean, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just saying, and like the one thing you had mentioned here in the Flock chat, it was engaging. That you kind of had to pay attention and watch what you're doing. But we can, like you said, we can just talk about anything and everything else while we're playing. So that was pretty cool. It wasn't too engaging that we couldn't talk about stuff like if we're in a shooter, we'd have to sit there and be concentrating and make sure we're not getting killed and getting shot at, or if our teammates are getting shot at or we have to revive them and stuff. So it was just kind of a really relaxing sort of kind of atmosphere. So that was nice.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like there was a little bit of mental engagement because of the strategy, but it wasn't overwhelming where we couldn't have other conversations. But at the same time, I remember when the three of us played Diablo 3 last winter time, and that was great. I mean, we had good conversations, but you're not going into Diablo strategizing a whole lot necessarily in a multiplayer way.
Yeah.
So no, I am I'm really surprised how much I continue to enjoy it. It's one of those where I can pick it up and play 15 minutes and have a little bit of fun with, and also we played an hour and 15 minutes and it seemed like time had barely any time had passed. So
yeah, it was really quick.
It's a quarter muncher in some ways.
Yeah, in a different way.
Yeah,
in a time way.
So, but yeah, I think it is. It is. I was surprised actually how much I enjoyed it, and it was kind of fun to play with you guys as well. So,
Did it kind of lend to that feeling of? Did it feel kind of like high school couch co-op? Just because it's in some ways kind of a retro feeling game.
a little bit, I think in some ways because of the simplistic single screen aspect to it, that I would say, yeah, right. Like everybody's kind of sharing that same view. Um, that we had talked about this a little bit prime when we were playing about how much of the enjoyment was related to the graphic fidelity or the kind of the style, or if it would work in a different style. And I thought that it could work in kind of a you know in a lighter kind of 3D environment, something similar to um,
Like Shadow
whether
Complex or something.
yeah, Shadow
Kind of
Complex,
graphics.
something in that kind of Unreal Engine or a Unity engine could have worked relatively fine because of the fluid nature of it. But at the same time, I think I think we agreed also that the the old school charm of it does lend a little bit to the feel of this kind of throwback gameplay too.
Yeah, it was kind of that the old school look, but the current day multiplayer. Because obviously you couldn't really, I guess, sort of do that back in the day. It was probably only like 2-player. Really, you couldn't have like 4-on-4 or 3-on-3 or anything like that. So in that respect, it's kind of updated a little bit.
I don't know, my NES satellite playing Iron Man Stewart's off-road racing may tend to disagree with you, but yeah, I mean, I think it was to me it was different than when I've picked it up to try to practice by myself versus being able to get on either locally with my sons or online with you guys and have the conversation and kind of play that. There's a much more enjoyable experience with the social aspect of
Yep. Yeah, definitely something we should go back and play some more. Get a Gascles in there.
it. Yeah. So speaking of Agasicles, so you and I picked up a little bit. Well, I bombarded your Destiny 2 game as well. So you've been kind of picking your way through that. It was fun to jump back in with you. So thanks for letting me play while you were streaming last week. So have you had a chance to stream some more Destiny 2?
I have not. I kind of lost my way in the thicket this weekend, so this week is kind of me trying to reel myself back in. Um, but no, but we had a good time while we were there. It's weird. It's strange to me, kind of through over the time and the evolution of Destiny 2, because one of the other things that I'm concurrently playing with a fellow streamer of mine is Borderlands, and we'll talk about that a little bit later tonight. But
Well, no, I think we should just segue into both of them because it's
okay.
a nice kind of combo here.
Okay. Yeah. So I think he and I stumbled upon the realization that we were approaching Endgame on Monday. So he and I usually stream Monday and Friday nights. And this is a fellow Twitch streamer, Nordstradamus TV, I believe is what he goes by. And but the juxtaposition of these two games is interesting because Borderlands is the game for me that sticks in my mind as being known for and resonating with me in memory as the drop in, drop out modern co-op game. Like that drop in, drop out had kind of gone away for a period of time once we migrated away from local co-op, because local co-op used to frequently be somebody could just pick up the controller, if they came over to their house and they could just, player two and just enter your game wherever you were. Most of the times you didn't have to wait till the end of a level or for a specific, checkpoint or whatever for them to slipstream into. When multiplayer went online, a lot of that kind of went away. Like, people couldn't just join, like, in the middle of a mission. You had to go into a lobby and hit a loading screen and allow the machines to intercommunicate and talk to each other and kind of join up. But one of the great joys of Borderlands, and I think Swiss and I played together sometimes with our friend Jack, but that was just a game that, like, I could get up on Saturday morning, and it was really good for adulting as well, because a person could get up, they could start playing. They didn't have, if people were running late, they didn't have to wait. They could start playing. Whoever got up later, could just drop in on them wherever they were. That's exactly how we're playing Destiny 2 now. And and what's funny with Borderlands, because we're streaming it, is we play it like it's not drop in, drop out. It's a very highly coordinated start of the live streams and joining up and entering the game and not taking off till the other person gets there, and so on and so forth. But Destiny 2, I would just happen to be in the middle of the Warmind campaign, and the way I'm playing Destiny 2, as you and I discussed during the live stream, I don't want to say I'm not caring. I'm not as structured in my approach to the content, at least for the slipstream back into the relaunch on Steam. I'm just hitting whatever I happen to hit kind of at random, and I'm playing that, and then when I pop to 780 or 790 or whatever, I'll take off and go do Shadowkeep. I've basically abandoned all hope of taking the individual characters through the different pieces of DLC, because in some cases it's just too difficult to figure out where to pick up those missions and how to reconnect to that stuff. And as we also discussed during the live stream, and I think maybe on a show prior to, as far as I can tell, Bungie has not retained any record of your mid-stage progress if you were in the Osiris campaign or Warmind. You've just lost that. I mean, you have all the XP and weapons and any loot drops that you picked up, but your actual story progression is pretty much gone. So everything is kind of a reset, which is a little unfortunate, but it's also an interesting thing that I think Destiny 2 for people who play it casually gets a buy for a lot of things, right? Because there's so much content and so much stuff to do. I just went into it, and we've talked before, it's a game that I frequently don't mind repeating things that I've done before. So I went into it, kind of like when I upgraded my PlayStation 3 hard drive back in the day and, didn't have any game saves on it. I was like, oh well, I guess I'll just start it all over. That's kind of how I feel about Destiny 2, and it's because it's mechanically such a great game. I don't know, DB, what did you think about our multiplayer session?
No, I mean, I agree with that about the ability to rerun missions and story modes. I say that as somebody who, reruns strikes on a regular basis, both for the gear, but also, I mean, we're running a small segment of maps, but it's mechanically so sound, or that it is the drop in, drop out aspect of it, and the ability to, once it becomes not a challenge in terms of navigating the landscape, becomes a communication or a coordination, or trying to run it with certain, having Zimvala's bounties that make me play it differently with certain types of weapons that I don't normally play with. So it is something where it's easy to run back and forth with. So yeah, I agree. It was fun to jump in and jump out. I had just finished some of the Festival of the Lost content. I had, I'm up in the 950s at this point, and so I was a little overpowered for running back through the Warmind. But I think the way that they did it, and again, whether or not they communicated it effectively to players about kind of that soft reset, like you were saying, but with New Light, with the ability for anybody to jump back in and start playing the newest content, probably outweighs the people who are kind of stuck in between those content drops as well.
Well, and I think too is that the people, the people who would have most loudly complained, don't actually care about the single player campaigns, right? The people who would complain about, a soft reset and that causing an issue would have been the people who were all wrapped around the axle about, their light levels and comp and playing Crucible. And so, that fortunately that thing that Bungie apparently chose to sacrifice didn't really impact the most turgid of their crew.
So yeah, no, it remains as by my cheesy opening, it remains an easy go-to game. And as you were talking about it, I do think, I hadn't really thought about it this way, but there is, there is this drop in, drop out aspect that is almost like the equivalent of the 16-bit brawler in Destiny, right? Like it's kind of mindless action in some points once you get over leveled, um, but it's still kind of fun. Just like Streets of Rage is kind of mindless action, but it was still kind of fun to have your friend come over after school and just pick up wherever you were within level 6 of the subway or whatever, right? I
And
think that there's
and concurrently to bounce out, right? Because I
yeah,
mean, when we ended for the evening, I can't remember if I was taken off to go to bed or if you were, but that person individual left and the other person could continue on playing however they saw fit. It's weird because I feel like it's not a thing that really gets talked about a lot, and that Destiny 2 doesn't get any credit for. And I don't think it's prevalent, right? I mean, even when you look at like the battle royale games, right? They're all match based, and so it's not drop in and drop out. You have to wait until you get to a definitive, cutover point to connect with that person in a lobby and go into the next match. So, yeah, it's interesting.
no, and it is interesting, but it's also rare that drop in and drop out, other than Borderlands. But in terms of the looter shooter space, it doesn't really work the same in the Division. It's a little more drop in there.
Oof, yeah, it's a little, yeah, there's a little friction
Right?
there.
Yeah, and it's even worse in Anthem, right? I mean,
Well,
again,
yeah.
another place where this kind of drop in, drop out looter shooter should work. Um, I don't even know that Diablo does it very well. In some ways, of the ability to drop in and join somebody quickly like that. So
Now, do you recall? So, and then when you dropped in, did I send you an invite, or were you just able to find me
no,
and
I could
join
just
up?
see. I could just because we're on our friends list. I could just join your fire team, and that if you were in a space where that was possible, basically, as long as you're not in a match made activity or sitting in the tower with too many people, I can join you. My uncle and I do this all the time. Just before I was on the podcast, I was turning in a few bounties for the weekly reset, and he jumped in and picked me up, and we ran a little bit, and then faded back off. Right? I mean, it very much was this drop in, drop out
Yeah,
aspect there.
yeah. And as we have this conversation, I realized, like, I think the most disappointing thing of us canceling our Stadia orders is the fact that we've lost the one avenue we would have had to have that experience with Prime.
Osiris Prime. This
I
is
could
so
still do it on
cool.
Xbox if I ever wanted to. You guys have it on Xbox, right?
Yeah,
Yes, but I don't know. When was the last time you played Destiny 2 on Xbox TV?
I I played Iron Banner on Xbox over the weekend, so
Okay, all right.
that's my pinnacle deal.
And
So.
I could definitely be influenced. My instances of yeah,
Well,
yeah,
you can
we
play
had
with
some.
me because I'm not like I'm super high in that in that version. So
No, and we could go back and play some of those older. All the first year stuff is free, so
So what happened? I mean, so that's it, it's interesting. This is becoming a little bit of a Destiny 2 podcast. I apologize. On
no,
on
it's
console.
never happened before.
that's never happened.
On console DB, what happened? Or did everybody on console get reset to 750 also?
Yep. Yeah, New Light is across everything. So
Okay, wow.
if you own it, you own you know it like on PlayStation 4, I own Forsaken, so I have that. Um, on Xbox, I purchased just the base game and never purchased any of the expansions, and so I have exactly the same as somebody who never purchased anything because they all the first year content is free. So anybody could jump in and play those. The Warmind story that we were playing. Everybody could play that. At the same time, all the Crucible maps, all the strikes, and the Gambit playlists, even the newer content is free for everybody as well. So it allows the ability to everybody to hopefully keep a larger population in some of those match made activities.
Okay, very cool.
So sorry for coughing into the microphone, but so Prime, you and Agasicles have played a little bit of something similar, and I'm going to give you guys, now that we've had our Destiny time, let's take a minute to have our Fortnite 5, and you guys can talk about some of your Fortnite experiences.
Yeah, so over these past couple weeks, actually, I've been playing. Obviously, I've been playing Fortnite because I always pretty much what I always do. But I played with my nephew couple maybe like 3 weekends ago for the first time. He has it on the Switch, and he just happened to pop into my game while I was online. At one point, he just popped in my party. As I was coming out of a game, I just saw that he was there. I was like, oh cool, so I'll play with him. And then one of his other friends, they popped into, so we were playing for a while and won a couple of games. Actually, we won the first 2 games that we played, and then played maybe a half a dozen or so more after that, and did pretty well. We didn't win anymore, but it was still pretty fun. But that brings me to the well, two things: the matchmaking, which they've been doing recently, is the skill-based matchmaking, and that they do when you're going into a game. And he just started playing when he got his Switch. He's been playing on the Switch, and I think he said his friend later on was on Xbox, I believe. So, and he's been playing since like the first season, I believe. I think even back on PC, I think. So, and I've been playing, I'd say since like season 7. I'll say end of 8, and then kind of religiously past that. So I have a pretty high level, I guess, because there's like an overall level. And I was decent. I might have had a few wins like in each like solo and duos, and I think squads. I probably had the most, like near 10 or so. But it actually matched us up with some pretty decent players, and now they do have bots in there too now that they throw in there. And I mean, you always obviously see those at the very beginning of the match. So you could take those. You could tell because they're just kind of just sitting there hitting the house, and then you shoot them once, and they just kind of like look around and like spin around or something. They're pretty. They're nothing too advanced. But we were getting some pretty good matches in there. Like I said, we won the first 2, and then after that, I think they kind of like ramped us up and maybe like even us out a little bit more, maybe to my skill and to his friend's skill. So it works pretty well. I know there's a lot of, as usual, like I put in the Flock chat, or I'm sorry, not the Flock chat, the Discord chat earlier. There's people grumbling about the matchmaking, and not so much the bots. I think it's more the matchmaking that people are they're complaining, I guess, because they're getting put in with people that are hard. It's harder for them, like not necessarily like pro players, but people who, I guess it's like the YouTubers and the streamers and stuff out there. They're getting put into these harder matches. They're like, oh, now it's not so easy for us. Well, I mean, that's how I felt. Like when I first started, like I was lucky if I got a kill. I was happy when I got a kill because I like would barely get kills. But now, I mean, yeah, the bots are fine, but I can actually get kills on regular people now because I've been progressively working up. And even with the bots, obviously I had like a couple seasons before the bots, but that kind of helps me that, I can get those couple kills. I was like, okay, I kind of warmed up now. I kind of got my aim going, so I can go in and battle these higher up people. So it's kind of nice. I kind of like it. Maybe just because I kind of stunk before, but now I'm starting to get better. And then the second.
Oh, that's only invoked when you play ranked, right?
I believe it is it's in squads too. I believe now. The matchmaking. Because if it isn't, then I've gotten way better than I thought. Because I don't know, I'm not sure.
Unless, so is that I don't your know experience, Agassicles, on PC? Is it any different there?
I guess I just haven't. I'm just like on PC. I'm not consciously aware of like my rank or whatever, or how that impacts.
Yeah.
Like now, most of the time I play solos. So.
Yeah, I don't know. See, I don't know if it's in solo. I don't think they have it in solos. The matchmaking.
Yeah, and I mean, I've played squads. I'm just not conscious. I mean, you would think that then lobby access to the game would be inherently slower. Like it's noticeably slower in Apex when you play ranked. I guess I thought that those matchmaking things were only invoked when you were in, I guess, arena matches, which I thought was the Fortnite variant of ranked, but.
Oh, yeah. I think that's supposed to be like their ranked version. I don't know if it's even in ranked at all or in the arena mode. Because I know I've watched at least one YouTuber that I watch. He's like just pretty much Fortnite, and he was saying how it was in the squads and in duos. And I know for sure it's in duos because me and my son have won a couple, and he's way lower in rank on me. So, and I'm pretty sure. I mean, those guys the 2 matches we won, I think it was yesterday, the day before maybe. I mean, I could tell they're actually people, but I mean they really weren't very good. And I was above their, I'm not trying to brag, but I was above their, they were my son's, level. So I mean, I could definitely see that.
Okay, I mean, maybe it's just something that's kicked in. Like I'm basically a relative noob, and I've won a solo match this season and have, definitely completed a handful of times in top 10, top 5.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
I'll
the thing.
have to dig under behind the curtain and see what's going on there.
I've won just in general. I've won a lot more matches now, so I mean, I'm pretty sure it's in the least squads, and I'm pretty sure it's in duos too, though. But, and then the second thing with my nephew when I was playing actually last week, or during the week, I should say, was they have actually party chat now. It's like cross. It's within Fortnite's game. It's party chat, so it doesn't matter what if you're on PC, Switch. Because like I was on Xbox and he was on Switch at the time. And we were able to go into the party within the game, and we were able to talk to each other. So that was pretty cool. I didn't know they had that in there yet, and I just happened to see it like when I was in the options. I was like, oh, I wonder if this is like an internal Fortnite game party chat, and it was. So it's pretty cool that they're doing that. I hope more games start doing that, because that would be pretty nice if we can if we can do that. That'd be if we're able to somehow play Destiny when all you guys are on PC or PlayStation 4 and I'm on Stadia or even Xbox. I mean, that'd be pretty cool. So hopefully,
it really starts to unify platforms there when you can have cross chat amongst consoles. So
yeah, of course, then you need cross play too, though. So
yeah,
that's something different. So, but yeah,
well, let's stick on the. Go ahead. Do you have any other Fortnite?
Nope, that was it.
There, I want to stick on the competitive gaming scene here and go back to you, Agasicles, and Rainbow Six Siege. So is this? Are you streaming it? Are you playing in a squad or?
I did stream it. This it was only one night. So there's a Discord server that I'm in that people are. I guess they've recently. One guy was a big Siege fan, and I guess he's converted some others. So yeah, it wasn't bad. I mean, I enjoy Siege. I would probably prefer to play Terrorist Hunt most of the time. Siege is just a very man. It's sweaty. I mean, it's almost as sweaty as Call of Duty, but I mean, no, it's seriously sweaty because that community, like, I don't think there's any such thing as a casual Rainbow Six Siege player. Like, I
think that's accurate. Yeah, at this point in time, if you're still playing, you're invested.
Yeah, and I am a casual player, which means I'm just never gonna do well. So I actually got a hip fire kill during the match, so I was pretty proud of myself for that. But
so I interrupt you real quick. So I guess that's my question. As a casual player, did you find had you been playing it for this year? I can't remember. Is this like the first time you started playing it?
No, I mean, I have it. I always have it installed. I've played, previous seasons. Rainbow Six Siege, I mean, given my exposure to it, and maybe if I played more, I would think differently, but I feel like it doesn't change a huge ton between seasons. Whereas, like, on Fortnite, this season, it's kind of interesting, because, again, I think of myself as a noob Fortnite player, but I jumped into solos, and I played a healthy amount of solos right off the bat. So, then when I squatted up, I got connected with some people who had played more frequently but hadn't played as much, and, like, I was the guy who knew about Zombie Island, which was weird, which is a thing that's been instantiated for this season. So, other than the operators themselves, I don't think, like, the gameplay of Siege really changes that much from season to season. So I wasn't any worse off than I already was for that game. But yeah, I mean, I know the basics of how it works and the basic, game modes. What I don't know is the maps, and that's what you really just have to. I mean, the people who continue to play today, they know the maps, and
right, you just gotta play it.
Yeah, and I think probably what I can do. Because I've been trying to, one of my recent little tech projects is when I've been trying to force myself to use my iPads more, because I have the blasted things and I don't use them as much as I should. I am almost certain that there's got to be, like something out there where I can download the Rainbow Six Siege maps and just like have them up on my iPad. So I may investigate that. But yeah, it's a punishing thing when you don't know the maps. but overall, it's still a fun game to play. Mainly because I was with those friends.
So as a casual player, and I think I might have played like 1 or 2 games, like when it was like a free weekend on Xbox at one point, like last year maybe, or the beginning of this year. So I played a ton, and I just got like utterly destroyed. I mean, is it like, is there a hard entry point for this game? Like, if I wanted to start playing it, will I just get destroyed and I just screw it, I'm not gonna play this anymore? Or do you think, or is it just like kind of like with Fortnite, where you kind of had to find that right group of people to kind of like guide you through it and kind of show you the ropes?
I gotta believe it's not like Fortnite. Like I've acclimated to Fortnite surprisingly well, and I am not a competitive like first-person shooter player whatsoever. Right. But and I mean I know. My first foray into Fortnite, fortunately I wound up connecting with like one person playing duos, and I was like, hey dude, and this was like season 7, and I was like, I hate to tell you, but like I've never played this game before. It's like, and he was cool enough to like answer my questions, but he was also cracking up, that I didn't know like what a juggy was and like all that kind of stuff. Surprisingly, that stuff stuck with me coming back to seasons 10 and 11. It was with Siege. You're just going to get punished. The other thing, this is an interesting thing to crack open, and this might be a nice thing to dive into later. Fortnite, surprisingly to me, very surprisingly, there's some. I'm trying to not give it an overabundance of credence, but there's some tactical thinking to Fortnite, right? There are some. There are some. There's a modus to how you operate that dictates the flow of combat in that game. Meaning, a conscious tactical choice of mine is I am an early rusher. So if we land in Fortnite and I hear somebody close by, I will try and jump them right away, because my feeling is mechanically, while we both just have pickaxes, I feel like I'm much closer in parity to a more experienced player. Once that person arms up, like then it starts. Then like their delta between my skill level and their skill level starts to walk away. Right. So those first 3 minutes on the ground on first drop, while I've got pickaxe, or if I get first weapon, like anybody that I hear, I'm pouncing them right away. As the match progresses. Then what I start to transition to is I always want to be first attack. So, as soon as I get hit in surprise from a different angle, I immediately go defensive and evasive, and just try and get myself around to a position where I've got a line of sight on them. But I tend to not stick around in engagements where I get jumped. Like Rainbow Six is supposed to be a very tactical, thoughtful game. But the geometry of that tactical prism has so many vertices on it that like I just don't have that web of thought like I've quickly acclimated to in Fortnite. And I don't know if that's because it's more difficult, or if it's because it's actually less nuanced and it's all a matter of memorizing the map and attacking from a very sharp corner seems to be kind of what it all degrades to. So there's a possibility that in some ways Rainbow Six, because it's much more constrained and it's CQB, that there's lesser opportunity to kind of tactically to have a lot of tactical variance in how matches unfold. Pretty much seems to all degenerate to people picking their spots and camping. So, there's that.
I would agree with you that there is a need to adapt and be aware of. There's a lot of critical thinking that goes into playing Fortnite, at least successfully, right? Because there are so many variables that happen, and the construction aspect, even if you know the map, the construction aspect of it also changes that continually. Where, as you were saying, if you know the map in Siege, you know the map, and you know that if you can sit in this little corner on top of this shelf over here, you're going to have a sight line that not everybody's going to know about.
Right, and on top of that, Fortnite, zone collapse happens differently every time, so it's a lot more asymmetric than like you were saying, Fortnite. I mean, Rainbow Six. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of strategy and critical thinking that goes into to good Fortnite play. So let's move on from Fortnite and let's go from one competitive game to another. So Osiris Prime, you and I have been playing
Yes.
the excitingly competitive Mario and Sonic at the Olympics. So I had a chance to play. My son and I played both some of the modern games and 64 throwback games. Did you play by yourself? Or did you play with some family?
Just by myself so far. Yeah, I'm just going through the story mode right now.
So did you buy this game? I say this as somebody who got it from GameFly, but I shouldn't raise my voice in so much inflection there, but that lends a little bit of judgment. Did you purchase this game?
I did buy
On
this
your
game.
own fruition?
Yes, I did buy this game, and actually because of you, because you said you started playing it. I was like, what? I had been kind of going back and forth. I was like, yeah, I'm still playing Fortnite. I'm starting to play Fortnite a lot again, and then I had these other games that I got to get through or play. I shouldn't say get through. And I was like, I was kind of on the fence. And then when we were playing Killer Queen back, you had mentioned that you had bought it and you had to play it with your sons. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna buy it. So I bought it that night actually after we got off playing. I didn't get to play it until like the next day or so. I think. Yeah, I
Well,
think
if
it
it
was.
makes you feel any better, I just today I was thinking, okay, well maybe I'll buy it through GameFly so I can get Pokemon here this week. So,
Yeah, but yeah, it was my
how are
own
you?
volition. Nobody held a gun to my head.
How are you enjoying it? What have you played so far?
So yeah, I have been enjoying it. There's a lot of talking though, man. At the beginning of that story mode, I don't know if
In the story
you
mode?
watched it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Oh,
was
the
like,
story mode is a
wow.
lot of talking.
Like I played one, I can't remember. I think it was just like like the 200-meter dash or whatever one of those running ones. Like it was the first event, and it's like 20 minutes of talking and just kind of wandering the different the parts of the city and stuff that you can go to, which is kind of cool because it gives you um history on the Olympics and
Yeah, there's
Tokyo and stuff like
a
that. So
lot
kind
more
of
kind
cool.
of Tokyo backstory in there than I expected. I thought it was just going to be some cheesy Sonic fanboy aspects, but it's
Yeah.
they do populate it. I mean, there's some care given in part because, and maybe because it is Tokyo, but compared to some of the other ones, Rio or that was 2016. Some of the other ones where they haven't really done anything. The story mode has only been kind of resigned to yes or the 3DS versions in the
Uh,
past.
okay.
So there never was on a console. There wasn't really a story mode like.
Yeah. When was the first one? Was it on the Wii, the original Wii?
Yep, 2008.
Okay, I
So
think I don't think I ever owned it. I think I might have just played like a demo or something. So I've never
there's
actually
a
owned
lot
one.
of waggling going on,
Yeah, I don't think I
and I think
actually
that
played one of
yeah,
these
go ahead.
before. No, I just said I
Yeah,
don't think I actually played one of these before. So
I think one of the things that as somebody who has played these from the beginning, and in part because my sons have enjoyed them, um, this one feels really competent. I mean, even my sons have kind of fallen off them as they've grown older, but also during the Wii U phase, it was just kind of, there's a lot of waggling. There was some unresponsive controls. So we were playing through some of these events, most of the events give you multiple ways to choose to play them. That you can
yeah,
do it with motion, you can do it with kind of analog and dual Joy Cons, or you can do it with a single Joy Con. And in part, that is maybe a response to the fact that motion isn't always the best choice, but also I think that it lends itself to the fact that the Switch Lite doesn't wouldn't really allow you to do motion control anyways because you can't detach your Joy Cons.
right, yeah,
So, and I
So
think that motion can. I mean, the choice actually created some better gameplay experiences because it wasn't just kind of shaking it as hard as you can to try to get across the finish line.
so way back in the day, this would have been late 80s, early 90s. There was a game on PC called Track and Field Olympic Games. Um, I think there was a summer one and a winter one, and it had local co-op, local co-op competition really. And player one would get like keys on the left hand side of the keyboard, and player 2 would get keys on the right-hand side of the keyboard. You would race each other by both of you like banging on the keys for the left stride and right stride. Is this similar, frenetic and mechanical, and often thoughtless gameplay? And how is your experience truing up with? This game has not been received very well critically. How are your experiences comparing with that view from the rest of the media?
Well, actually, I thought it had been getting, I mean, decent reviews at least, if not good reviews. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong websites.
Metacritic has it what, in like the high 60s? I mean,
60,
it's not
69, yeah.
Yeah, right. It's not tracking very well. I think in part, at least from some of the reviews I read, that it is relatively limited. You know, the story mode is maybe 4 to 5 hours. There are 34 events, both between the modern ones and the classic ones, but there's not a lot of there's no way to really string them together. It works really well as kind of a party game or a pick up and play. Um, that you can choose an event, but then there's not really a playlist where you're going to go through all the equestrian, the track and field events, or go through all the dream events. It's not really
Oh, okay.
stringing everything together. So from what I've read, that seems to be some of the knocks against it. The people that have reviewed it well have said some of the things that you were saying. I guess Prime, sorry. In terms of the fact that there is a little more depth to the story mode, that there's that they do give a little bit more there where there hasn't been in the past. The multiple control aspects. So I would say that in my perspective, I'm enjoying it to the point where I would think about buying it. That it is a fun kind of co-op, multiplayer, family-oriented kind of party game, and it's a party game in a better sense than like Mario Party, because oftentimes Mario Party ends up being kind of that frustration of controls and luck and other pieces, where this is with all these different events, everybody's going to find something that they're good at, right? Like there's enough here that when I played with family, we all won something, and that we would go back and forth and choose different things. Um, that there's variety there. So I'm enjoying it a lot more than anticipated. The only one at this point that maps to my expectations was the equestrian event, and playing it with motion controls, which are kind of janky. And that's what I expected this to be, was kind of a janky motion control kind of waggle fest. But
so let me ask you: do you, just in your off the top of your head gut feeling, do you think you have, and both you and Prime, do you think you guys have more games for the Switch than you did for the Wii, or about the same, or less?
I definitely have more than the Wii. Probably the Wii and the Wii U combined, to be honest, because I didn't have too much for the Wii.
I think I have more. I had more on the in part because I was picking up a lot of eShop game. I mean, of WiiWare and the pieces.
The virtual console.
Yeah.
Yeah, I asked the question because, as you mentioned that, you talk about this game, and you mentioned, you mainly think about picking up as a party game, and it struck a chord to me, like my fatal flaw and critical roll-off with the Wii was I just hit a point where that statement was representative of like 75% of my collection. Like, the vast majority of games that I wound up with on the Wii were party games for people to come over and play, which were great, except when nobody was over at my apartment to play. So eventually that was one of the key, down select criteria in getting rid of it, was because I was like, this thing just sits here when nobody's here. Because it just didn't have a ton of the single player oriented content that was good Like a lot of the games, and this is often a problem with the Nintendo console in general. A lot of the games that would normally be in my wheelhouse tend to not be that great. So,
Sure.
hopefully
Well,
the Switch doesn't trend that way. The eShop helps a great deal with the
yeah, it
Nintendo
provides a
Switch.
lot more depth and variety of gaming experiences. You know, I'll say that as much as we are lumping on praise of a Mario and Sonic game, and it's a fun game. I'll say that I'm also someone who owned Track and Field 2 on the original NES, right? Like, and that was pretty much just stringing games together here and there, right? And it wasn't a big narrative Olympic event that I was just playing one event after the other. You know, I am your experience talking about the Olympic Games on PC and mashing the buttons back and forth. You know what it brings me back to is the pencil at the Track and Field arcades game. Did you ever play that where you put the pencil because you had to do the same thing at the Track and Field arcade game, like the Konami one in the arcades, where you'd have to mash the two run buttons back and forth. But if you put a pencil or a pen in between your fingers and you bounce it back and forth, you could hit both buttons and destroy the competition, right? So there's ways that we can find fun in anything, even in something that is maybe not this deep immersive leveling up experience. So that's kind of where surprisingly Mario and Sonic it lands, is that it is kind of a lot more fun than I expected. So let's move off of something that is lighthearted and fun into something that is probably a little dystopian and depressing. So Disco Elysium, Agascles, how far have you gotten into this? This has gotten a lot of praise in the gaming media, and so I'm really interested to hear what your experience is.
Yeah, I've only played the first couple of hours, I think, and time scale in that game and how much you get done within a given amount of time is going to be very subjective to the individual player. I spent a lot of time walking around trying to not necessarily go through every branch of a dialogue tree, which wound up being me wasting time. That game is highly, highly, highly dependent upon you going through every single branch of a dialogue tree. But my first two significantly resonating experiences were querying the old woman in the wheelchair in the hotel lobby, um, and then also querying a young lady outside who was I think peddling some wares outside her mother's bakery or store or something. And in both of those instances, some incremental clue was dropped in the eighth variant branch of that discussion tree that I wouldn't have gotten had I. Usually when I interact with a character in a dialogue heavy game like that, I will typically plumb one or two branches of the dialogue tree just because I want to kind of gamify to make it a little bit realistic from a storytelling perspective. And maybe every fourth or fifth character I'll actually go through every single line of the tree. But you're the stage setting for this is that you're a detective who has woken up, who's lost his memory, and so it's a mystery to be solved. And that's just a very kind of stingy way to go about it. The game progression is essentially tightly coupled to the notion of getting clues. And
Is that pretty much? I mean, is it a narrative-driven experience?
oh
Or
yeah, it is text heavy.
okay,
I've had another experience similar to that with an indie RPG this year in Sunless Skies. I think it's Sunless Skies or Sunless Seas. I can't remember which one's the first one and which one's the sequel. But I played the sequel earlier this year, and the difference there is there's some mechanical payoff by you getting to interact with and drive your submarine, but in between that, there's just a ton of dialogue to read through. Disco Elysium cranks that up another 1.5, right? And so you've got to have a certain temperament for that type of content. The difference is it's going to make me sound like a hypocrite. where I criticize a game like Red Dead Redemption 2 for it being overly laborious in getting through incremental tasks and often putting tasks in front of you that are not meaningful. And I saw a fellow streamer of mine who I'm a member of her Discord commenting on, and she's a different type of gamer than we are, but same complaint as I have, which is like, how ridiculously laborious is it to not allow us to run in camp in Red Dead Redemption 2? You know you need to talk to a person, you see that they're on the other side of the camp, you break through this mystical, invisible barrier, and your travel time to the other side of the camp is now quadrupled, right? You know, and all the discussion going on about Death Stranding sounds like it has a similarly laborious do loop of getting through very incremental, trudgy kind of tasks. This isn't that, but because progression is much more ethereal than hardcore tasks, like hard tangible tasks, like putting a wheel back on a wagon. So in some ways it's even more abstracted. But it doesn't feel like you're bogged down in doing meaningless stuff. It's just a ton of text to crawl through. It's very much akin to playing Oregon Trail in a lot of ways, at least from what I've seen in the game so far. That is balanced by the fact that the game is incredibly beautiful, incredibly stylistic, just a wonderful attention to art. Thank goodness, because if there wasn't that, there wouldn't be much like going on for this game. And the dialogue is quirky and it's funny and it's a little bit dystopian and steampunk, and you know, a little bit of a little Blade Runner and also humans. Yeah, and I want to say WALL-E, but maybe that's not an accurate thing. But you know, there's some pretty horrible human beings as you're going through this, and you aren't a great horrible. I think there's a little anti-hero to it too, in that you aren't a particularly great human being as well.
Yeah, that's what I've heard about it and read about it, and that there is some of that. You know, there is this contrast in your character. There's a little bit of that kind of Philip Dick-esque futuristic piece there as well. Do you see yourself sticking with it? I mean, this is, from some gaming circles, this is up there in kind of game of the year talk for an RPG. Is it something that you can see that, or are you bouncing off of it?
Not at this point. And I spent some time over the last week kind of trying to scribble and come to terms with this whole concept that I have in my head about the quad chart of gaming, right? This whole thing of where, you know, the theatrical and mechanical are inherently in opposite corners because they are always kind of at war and tension with each other. And then budget plays in that, and then this notion that we often talk about the length versus shortness of the dopamine loop. And I came up with a little scribbled drawing that I think effectively conveys it, but I'm still trying to tweak it. But this is a game that is highly, highly theatrical, low budget, low mechanical, and has a very long dopamine loop. That's just not my kind of game. That's not where I want to line up in the quadrant of gaming. I have not seen... Right, and so to me, the game of the year in some ways is a game that is kind of squarely in the middle of that quadrant and does like a lot of everything well, probably. And if I have to lean one way or another, I start to lean more towards the mechanical quadrant and less towards the theatrical. I haven't seen anything in even the game. As far as I can tell, this is only a point-and-click adventure. I haven't really gotten into any combat or fighting, so I don't know how that unfolds. But
no, I think that's what I've heard as well. But it seems to be people that latch onto it from a narrative standpoint have really enjoyed it and thought it does some interesting things with kind of the dialogue and decision tree stuff, where they were drawing comparisons with Outer Worlds and saying that Outer Worlds feels kind of mundane because of Disco Elysium. But then other people have kind of bounced off of it in the press because it is relatively limited in its scope as well.
It's fairly canned. There's not a huge amount of opportunity for entropy there. I think the people who are very enamored with it are probably, again, kind of in that same quadrant as the Death Stranding crowd, and probably people who would really get into Heavy Rain and Detroit Become Human and those type of games that are less mechanical and more about kind of playing out a movie. This is very much to choose your own adventure kind of thing. I would say if it does anything kind of super interesting from a game engine perspective, it's that the progression and role playing skill attribute part of it is very card game esque, where as you interact with NPCs in the world and perform certain things in dialogue, like leveraging influence or intimidating someone, that's how you progress. And you get this neat little kind of notification pop in the middle of the dialogue tree that says, "Oh, you've progressed in influence or whatever." And you actually see the die roll, for your saving throws and things like that. So that's a little bit interesting in terms of a presentation style that's a little differentiated from other RPGs this year. But as far as game of the year, it's like I don't feel like it covers enough of the space that a game can cover in terms of implementation and design for it to qualify. From my perspective, great game for what it does. Doesn't compare to, in my opinion, to things that some other games have done this year.
Sure. Well, I think that game of the year discussion is going to be so interesting this year because I am struggling to feel really drawn into anything at this point compared to where I was last year, but that could just be me as well. So I'm really looking forward to kind of wrapping up the releases over the next week or so with Jedi Fallen Order, with Pokemon. In December we get maybe Darksiders Genesis, at least on PC and Stadia. But I think we're kind of wrapping up our releases. So one other release this week that I want to talk a little bit about, but I'm going to segue it into our gaming assignment, is Need for Speed Heat. So as a EA Origin Access Premier or whatever name they subscriber, I've got Need for Speed Heat. I've played 3 hours of it up until this point. It really, I thought I was going to bounce off of it, gentlemen, but I am actually enjoying it a lot more than I expected. It seems to land somewhere in between Forza Horizon and Burnout. That it's not quite as smashy as Burnout, but I can also stay on the road a whole lot easier than I can in Forza Horizon. Right? That's not as, the mechanics are more arcadey than in the Horizon series. Granted, I love the Horizon series. It was a reason why I wanted to pick up an Xbox One X last. But this has a day races, and then it has night. And the night races, you have the cops kind of chasing after you. The night races feel more like Need for Speed Most Wanted, where you've got this kind of pursuit mechanic going on. It is an open world map. You can set waypoints and have the navigation there. The story is kind of probably closer to 2015's Need for Speed in trying to evoke, but it still feels like they're chasing after some of this Fast and Furious, but not as kind of outlaw-y heist aspect as they tried in Payback from 2017. So it really feels like they're pulling a lot of pieces from some of their, you get the chases with the cops and strips that the cops can put down as you get more on you. So there's a little bit of hot pursuit in there as well. They're pulling bits and pieces from each of the previous Need for Speed releases over the last 4 releases. My son played a little bit as well, and immediately went, there's no damage modeling, right? And playing it in the playing it in the daytime, there really isn't any damage modeling. and the damage modeling comes as you play at night. And playing at night has a little bit of that burnout. You have a stamina bar or a damage bar above another car, whether it's a car that you're in a race with or as you're trying to avoid or take down police. So you get, by the end of my first night playing night within the game context, my car was pretty well beat up, and eventually it was sparking, and I was dragging stuff along the highway, and finally got caught by. Um, so there is some there. It provides. It's. I found that it provided me the ability to, if I wanted, kind of the tense getaway aspect, I could choose, and you can choose your day or night events. You can swap between it. That if I wanted that pursuit aspect, I could go to the night. But if I wanted to just kind of do some races, I'd stay in the daytime. And last night I just played in the day and did a couple of circuit races and just kind of, I find the tracks in the open world are mapped a whole lot better than the Crew 2. The damage and the controls is definitely better than the Crew 2. So it definitely feels, again, it feels like they've hit this kind of, I don't know that I would call it a sweet spot, because it's kind of generic, because it is just pulling from all the other Need for Speed games that people have played over the years. But it seems to be picking some of the highlights of that as well.
Is this made by the ex-Burnout guys, or?
Yeah, this is Ghost Games. So
yeah, I don't think it's
this is
the
not
ex.
Criterion.
They're on Battle, whatever.
Yeah, they were on Battlefront. There are a few people from Ghost Games that Ghost Games was that kind of combination of the Need for Speed group and the Burnout group.
Yeah.
There's so there's some lineage there, but it probably is also the fact that because of that kind of merging of studios, it's taken them this long, and probably even till the next game, to hopefully find what actually is their voice, their vision. That this just it's fun, but it feels by the numbers to some degree as well. But that isn't necessarily bad. It's enjoyable. And so that is where I want to go with our gaming assignment, gentlemen, is to dive back in. I want to play some more Need for Speed Heat, and because of that, I want to assign us a chance to dive in to some other racing games, whether that is wheel and pedals and some rally, or whether that is some kart racing on the Switch or any other console. But to dive in and find some time to compare some of our times around the tracks. And so that is what I'm looking for gaming assignments over the next 2 weeks. Thoughts about that? Questions about Need for Speed before we wrap things up for the night?
I probably do, but I'm going to hit you up another episode since it's running a little long.
Yeah, that sounds good. And hopefully I'll have more to say at that point as well. So this is the E2KG Network. This is Enough to Keep Going podcast. This has been our Game Experience show. Next week we'll be back with our deep dive into the past 2 weeks of news. And as you just heard for our game assignment, in 2 weeks from now we'll be back to talk about some racing games and what else we've been playing. So for myself, Osiris Prime, and Agasically Stamos, thank you all for joining us, for suffering through my terrible voices, and for continuing to engage with us, not only during the show, but online, on our Twitter, on social media as well. So until we talk to you next, continue to enjoy, continue to play, and continue to find experiences that you can play together. Have a good night.